Guys, Self Educated Economist here, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Um, like I've said before, this channel isn't just about cryptocurrency, particularly Bitcoin. It's a economics channel, and I want to just bring some things that I'm looking at to kind of keep me up to date with what's currently going on in the macro universe or in terms of macroeconomics worldwide. So here, today we're going to be kind of focusing on Canadian real estate, but we're also going to look at United States real estate and as well as a little bit of European real estate. So here, this is the one of the Federal Reserve's websites. So here we're looking at the price action of Canadian properties, residential properties, since 1970 to present time in 2025. And this is an index chart, and I believe it's what's the word that I'm looking for? It's adjusted for inflation. And here in the year 2010 is like the measuring stick. Everything's set at 100 there. So anything below 100 it means the price. So for example, here in 2009 it was 90, so it was 10% cheaper than in 2010. And then here at the very peak of this real estate bubble was 198, so almost doubled in price versus 2010, 98% more expensive. And this is obviously the average price. Since then, it's obviously come down significantly, which is a good thing, which is a very good thing. So an interesting thing here, this run up here, as you could see in the 80s from like, I guess you could see really from like 1983, 1982, it peaked out and it went back down a bit, and then it started really pumping up and going up and up and up and up until you had this blow off top. And I'm sure back then people thought that, wow, these prices are insane. But essentially, you went into a bear market in Canadian real estate, and it lasted approximately 10 years, more or less, right? With a low somewhere in here in 1998, and then just some sideways action with a bias to the upside slightly from 98 to the year 2000, or about 2 years of that. But really, if you really look at it from like 1995 to the year 2000, it really did nothing. It just moved sideways with a bit of a downward bias and then back up. But 1998 was the low. So you could see from 1989, the high to 1998, it's almost 10 years. And the high here, so I'm basing it off of just this piece of data here. So can we look at, potentially 2029? No more, I guess it's 2031 as being a low. Well, I think the low will be before that, but I'm saying, sorry, the bear market or the downturn in Canadian real estate can last approximately 10 years, as we saw the previous one in the 90s last that long. And can we see a low possibly happen sometime in 2008, sorry, 2028, 2029? Maybe some sideways action for a couple of years, and then it starts to pick back up sometime in the early 2030s. Only time will tell. But I think there is more downside to be had here, and yeah, there's many reasons for that. There's some other channels like this guy is very good. Flynn, I always forget his name. Let me pause it here. Sorry, I don't want to. John Flynn Real Estate Stats. His channel's fantastic. He gets really good data on Canadian real estate. He's a Canadian broker, real estate broker, or real estate agent. Sorry, I forget these terms, but whatever. He sells real estate for a living. Very good channel. So I got some of his information, or he pointed me to some of this data, and I wanted to go check it out myself. So I wanted to make a video on it. So here's a look at the United States. So you could see these vertical lines represent recessions. So you could see here in 2006 was the top of the housing bubble, and then the great financial crisis happened here in 2008. So actually, real estate prices came down significantly throughout the country before this even happened, and then this recession caused prices to go down even further until it pretty much bottomed out in 2012, and then it's been up into the right since 2012, with pretty much just sideways action since 2022 until and now we're starting to see a little bit of a low. So is interesting. I think it was his channel was saying that what's happening in Canada essentially like kind of forecasting what could potentially happen in the United States. And I think that it's very accurate, right? Like what's currently happening in the downturn in Canadian real estate, um, is that a crystal ball, if you will, for what's going to happen in the United States. And I think it's very possible in the years to come, maybe even this year. But the difference is that you could see that Canada never had a downturn in the 2006 to 2012. It just pretty much kept going. And I mean, it had this little drop here from 2008, Q1 2008 to Q1 2000. So 1 year of a bit of a drop, and then it was up and to the right for the most part, and then sideways in this period. But then we had the real estate speculation and bidding war bubble here. I almost bought a house in Canada in Southern Ontario back in 2001 and sorry, not 2001, 2021. And I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I didn't because then I would have been under and then buying and then having to pay a mortgage and yeah. So anyways, yeah, so that's my thoughts on that so far. And then let's take a look at Germany. Germany's a little bit different, right? We have your measuring stick, if you will, here in 2010. So prices were significantly lower than what they were even in 1981. So it was in a downtrend from 1981 until I hit this bottom in 2010. I'm not sure why this happened. I don't really know too much about German economics, but then it had this big run up from 2010 until it hit this blow off top in 2021, and it's corrected some since then and had a low in Q1 2024, and since then it's gone up a bit. But is this sustainable? I don't know. You tell me. You let me know in the comment section. And then lastly, we're looking at this is the United Kingdom, and it's pretty much always just been in a massive bear market since the like 1970s, and it just keeps going up into the right. Although it didn't have the massive run-ups that Canada had for sure, but it's been more like slow and steady up into the right. So is it due for a correction? Probably. I don't have any other data on this, so I don't know if you live in the United Kingdom and you have data on when there was a last correction in the United Kingdom residential property prices. You let me know. And I got some data from this website, OECD Affordable Housing Database. It's an interesting website. You get lots of charts and stuff. So I was looking at this householding so households housing cost burden as a share of disposable income, and this is looking at mortgage and rental costs. So here we have all the a bunch of different countries at the bottom here, and Canada falls at about 25%. So that's what the share of mortgage and rental costs is across the country. I'm sure that's higher in places like Toronto, Vancouver, and other large cities in Canada. Let's see, Switzerland is up at about 25% as well. The United States, the same thing. It's about, it's just under that 25% mark. Colombia, where I'm originally from, is just over 20%. And then Finland being very high. And then if you scroll down here in this PDF, now it's looking at housing cost burden of low and middle income households as a share of disposable income. So so the rent burden for lower income people, specifically, where's Canada? Colombia is very high. Wow, look at that, almost 70%. Wow, wow. And I'm assuming places, cities like Medellin and Bogota are probably what's causing a lot of this high unaffordability, if you will, in terms of housing. Chile's up there too. Switzerland is 40%. Where's Canada? It's down here. It's like in 35% more or less. And where's the United States? But I think it's somewhere around the same thing. I don't see the United States. Oh, right here. It's about 40%. So it's high in the United States as well too. So that's interesting. And then lastly, we're going to look at some charts here from Market Mania. He actually has a really good YouTube channel too. He does a lot of, it's pretty much just about Canadian real estate for the most part. So here we're looking at Canadian debt hits $2.3 trillion. So that's bigger than the entire GDP. And so it has grown 2% in just 7 months. The debt, while the economy shrunk 0.4%. So obviously, this is unsustainable in the long term, right? If the economy keeps shrinking while the debt keeps growing, eventually you're not going to be able to pay or service a debt that the country has. So I guess the country would default under debt. What else? This is interesting. So Canada, I think it's 2016 where they sold out the rest of the 2016 the rest of the gold that they had. So now Canada is the only G7 nation that doesn't actually have any gold reserves, which I think is silly, silly. Um, Considering the run up that gold has had, and the reasoning was because they wanted more liquid assets. Ridiculous, completely ridiculous. That's just a complete mismanagement on all levels. Yeah, Canada, I'm sorry. I lived in Canada practically my whole life. I immigrated to Canada in 1992. It was a fantastic country, and it just saddens me to see the state of what Canada is right now. It's a joke. It's a joke. And I think, and it's just not Canada. It's not just Canada. It's many countries, many Western countries. But yeah, it's just not looking good. He has some other interesting stuff here. Check out his YouTube channel. It's very good. I think he's a little bit doom and gloom sometimes, but I think he's been pretty accurate at least the last couple of years. This is an interesting one that he has on his X Twitter whatever. Food affordability in Canada. So in back in 1983, a loaf of bread would take you about 10 minutes of work to be able to afford that. Today, I guess 2025, it takes you 48 minutes of work in order to be able to buy the same loaf of bread. Eggs, 6 minutes back then. 17 minutes nowadays. This one was an interesting beef. 25 minutes now it costs you it takes you 1 hour and 12 minutes of work at minimum wage, of course, in order to be able to afford 2 pounds of beef. That's just sad. Look at this old guy over here struggling. When he was young, he was ready to go. 40 years later, he's struggling to. You know what? The boomers are doing well for themselves. So this might not. This should be a young person struggling, not a boomer. The boomers are doing good. Um, and it's not really their fault. It's just they took advantage of a situation. That it is what it is. I don't blame them. I would have done the exact same thing. So it is what it is, right? I don't want to play the blame game. That doesn't get us anywhere. And that's it for him. He had fantastic YouTube channel. Check it out. And then I found this one too. I actually saw this one from watching one of what's it? Flynn Real Estate. John Flynn. So from that website, OECD, price to income ratio. So the price of a home relative to your income. So if it's above 100, is less affordable. Below 100, is more affordable. So you can see the United States and Canada, it's not affordable at all. Spain is not affordable. Portugal, crazy, 158. So this is very, very expensive here. So the incomes are very low relative to what housing costs in Portugal in this case. Also Switzerland, obviously very high, so as well, 126. What country is this? This is Czech Republic. Okay, interesting. Finland's affordable. So is Romania. Maybe that's a place we want to look at for the future. Romania. Anyway, so Portugal is very interesting because I know Portugal had the golden visa a couple years ago, and I think since then they have like it's no longer available. But I know that a lot of Canadians and Americans moved to Portugal because they were like, they work online, they're either or they're retiring and they're independently wealthy or whatever. And so these people are not they don't need a Portuguese income in order to be able to afford this house. So this goes back to the Cantillon effect, which actually I think I skipped through that. I think this guy had a post on the Cantillon effect. Yeah, so the Cantillon effect essentially when new money comes into the economy, um, it creates a separation between the rich and the poor because the new money could buy things at face value at the current prices of things, or things currently cost when the new money comes in. Once they start buying things up, it starts driving prices up, right? So that's a fine example of here of what's happened in Portugal. You get new money coming in from the United States, Canada. People that could afford the prices of these homes here, they start buying it up, driving the prices up significantly, which is still cheap for Canadians and Americans, but for Portuguese people, the Portuguese citizen who has a lower salary can no longer afford these homes, or it makes the homes very unaffordable for your Portuguese person or your Portuguese citizen. So just something interesting to look at. I definitely want to kind of get some more information on this and possibly make a YouTube video about it. So stay tuned for that. And lastly, we're gonna look at this. This is interesting. So this guy Arthur McWaters. So in 1913, zero Americans families paid income tax. In 2025, every family paid income tax, and about two-thirds of the income tax covered fraud. So what he's saying is that essentially where the red line is and below, this is actually that income tax is actually paying for things. I'm assuming it's going to be to service the debt on that, on service the debt that the country owes, and also to, you know, transfer payments and you know, build roads and stuff. And I would say pay government employees, but I think government employees are some of the biggest problems that you have, and many of them are not very productive at all. So this is shocking. U.S. collected 2.4 trillion in income tax. So that's pretty much Canada's debt. And I guess that's in 2025, right? I think. Anyways, in 2025, but spend 1.5 trillion on fraud. If we didn't have to pay for fraud, only 900 billion we needed to be collected. So yeah, so it's very interesting. So I guess everything above that is for fraud. I guess I'm not too sure what exactly it means, but for me, the most interesting thing about this is that back in 1913, there was no income, nobody paid income tax in the United States, and I think there was like once the Federal Reserve came into play, they passed the income tax law. I don't know the exact term of it, and then people started paying income tax, and then you had the this is interesting the more people started paying income tax up into 1923, and then that dropped down. So it went up to almost 40%, and then during the 1929 stock crash, it dropped down to just below 20%, and then it just literally went up from after that, essentially. During the Second World War, and after the Second World War, it peaked, and then actually it has come down a bit since then. So it's kind of this interesting chart, and yeah, that's it for today's video. If you're finding the content valuable, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video if you like it. If you don't like it, well, give me a thumbs down. And yeah, if I make any errors, any mistakes, you want to correct something that I've said that I've made a mistake on, feel free to just drop me a comment down in the comment section, and I'll rectify any mistakes that I make. Anyways, guys, I'll see you guys next.